we are going to be reviewing distance, midpoint, and slope. And then talking about how are we going to use that with polygons. First, if you do not know these formulas off the top of your head, you should be writing all of these down. Whoopsies. Because I will not be giving them to you, you should know them. If you want to write down this information, you can. You do not have to. We'll be going over more of this information in the next video. So again, push pause, write down the formulas. So now we're going to be using the formulas to find the distance, midpoint, and slope of these 2 points. First thing you should always do is label your points. X1, that's a sub 1, Y1. That is different than when you write it with a 1 up top. This is an exponent when it's on top. When it's on bottom, that's just labeling which x it is. Here's x2, y2. Again, that's just saying that this is my second x and y. So if I first find my distance, that is equal to my x2 minus my x1, that squared, plus my y2 minus my y1, that squared. If you notice, I made sure to write minus and negative, because when you have minus and negative, that becomes plus, plus. So if I were to simplify this, 5 minus 9 is going to give me a negative 4. You want to make sure to leave that in parentheses. Plus 7 plus 3 will give me a positive 10, that squared. So that's going to be 4 times 4 is 16, 10 times 10 is 100. So it's going to be the square root of 116. And for right now, you can leave your answer just like this. So now I'm going to find the midpoints of my 2 points, and I can still leave them labeled like I did at the beginning. Midpoint is like finding the average of the 2 numbers. So it's x1 plus x2. It doesn't matter the order, because addition it can be either order, you're still going to get the same thing, divided by 2. So I could technically have 7 plus a negative 3, because negative 3 plus 7 is the same thing. And then I simplify. Midpoint should be a point, not just a number. So when I simplify this, 9 plus 5 is going to give me 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 7 plus a negative 3, that's the same thing as subtracting 3, which would be 4. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So this would be my midpoint. And finally, my slope. The key thing for remembering about slope is that your y's are on top. So for slope, it would be y2 minus my y1 over x2 minus my x1. And you might have already seen these numbers because you have from your distance formula. This becomes plus plus, so this is 10, and 5 minus 9 will give me a negative 4. You should always simplify your slope. So 10 over 4 can be simplified by 5 over 2. Now when you write the negative, it doesn't matter if you write it on top. You could also write it on bottom, or you could just write it right in the middle. These are all the same things, because it's just saying that this number right here is negative. So we're going to be using that information with problems like this. So in this triangle, it's saying, is a scalene, isosceles, or equilateral? So I'm talking about distance, because when you define a triangle, scalene means that no sides are congruent. Isosceles means 2 sides are congruent, and equilateral means all 3 sides congruent. Now, if you are a visual person, you might want to actually draw out this triangle and label the sides. That is fine by me. I'm not going to do that. I am, however, going to just write out my 3 lines I had to find the distance to. So I have DE, I have EF, and I have DF. So if I'm going to find the distance of DE first, this would be my x1, y1, DE, this could be my x2, y2. And so I'm going to have the square root of x2 minus x1, so y minus 0 squared, plus y2, 4 minus 0 squared. And this will be equal to, if you want to do this portion in your calculator, that's fine by me, but your answer should be in a square root format, unless if it is a perfect square. So this would be the square root. 1 times 1 is 1, 4 times 4 is 16, so it's the square root of 17. Right now you should pause and figure out what are the side lengths of EF and DF. Again, using your points above. So you should have gotten the square root of 20 for EF and the square root of 29 for DF. So now when I'm looking at my 3 side lengths, they're all different. So if all the sides are different, then this would be scalene. So using the distance formula to help figure out if a shape or a triangle is scalene, isosceles, or equilateral. And for this last problem, I want to know, is this shape right here a rhombus? So if this were a rhombus, there's 2 things that I could either check. I could check to make sure all the 4 sides are going to be congruent, because that's what the definition of a rhombus is. Or I could check to see if the diagonals are perpendicular. I am going to go with diagonals because it just seems a little shorter. So my diagonals here are BD and AC. So when I'm looking at perpendicular, I have to find the slope. So I'm going to first write out BD and slope. And I'm going to look at this. So I'm going to have this be my x1, y1, x2, y2. So y is always on top for slopes would be 1 minus 4 over 2 minus 0. So 1 minus 4 is going to give me a negative 3. 2 minus 0 is going to give me 2, so negative 3/2. So if these 2 lines are perpendicular, the slopes must be opposite reciprocal. So opposite means one has to be positive, one has to be negative, and reciprocal means that the 2 slopes are flipped of each other. So now I'm going to find the slope of AC, slope. And I'm going to say this is my x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to have my y's on top, 5 minus 0 over 4 minus negative 2. So 5 minus 0 is going to give me 5. This becomes plus plus, and 4 plus 2 is going to give me 6. Well, when I compare my 2 slopes here, they're opposite, meaning one is negative, this one's negative, and this one's positive. But they're not reciprocals, so no. My parallelogram ABCD is not a rhombus. Make sure to fill out your Google form and submit your answers.